great to have you on the podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, of course. And thank you for having me. It's pleasure to be here. Yeah, so I'm Chloe Wood. I currently work in operations, so Vice President of Operations in a company called Liberty Blume. So we're in the global business solutions industry. So, but my history, I mean, I'm a finance professional, so chartered accountant, but, don't hold it against me. But I have had a really, it's not an atypical, career path, if I'm really honest. So actually a law graduate, ended up doing analytics and investigative work, which then led into a bit more, so definitely found the legal path, but then led into financials and forensics. And then I was like, right, I'd like to be a bit more technical. I want to learn more. So I became an accountant. Joined Liberty Global, where I work today, 13 years ago now.
Wow.
Yeah.
So went in to work for Virgin Media at the time as a technical accountant. And then I've kind of constantly been looking for opportunities to learn. So I've moved around. So lots of finance roles, moved into operations, done a bit of strategy, couple of chief of staff positions, which you may have heard of. Yeah. And then I'm back in ops now. So, but lots.
Awesome.
Yeah. Anything to learn something new. I'm up for the challenge.
Yeah.
Sounds cool. So it's interesting, that kind of finance and ops kind of thing.
Yeah.
You don't, in our game, in the recruitment world, you often don't see people kind of flipping over to one. Often people stay in their lane a little bit and end up staying there.
Yeah.
So how have you found it?
Oh, yeah. You're asking me why I did that then.
Why
did you do that? Yeah, no, you're right. We have a lot of specialists that do, they're very technical. They want to stay in the lane, and there's lots of different roles in finance. So there's commercial roles, there's the technical accounting roles, there's some more on the treasury side. But I did enjoy the technical accounting. I always feel like the numbers is a safe place for me. My brain works in that way. It's very pragmatic. I like the structure and the factual element to numbers, and then interpreting what that means from a business perspective. But the operational thing came about where I was just asked if you'd be willing to come and run the finance operational teams. So this was out of accounting into more of the transactional finance teams. So in a big business, accounts payable, accounts receivable, that type of activity. And so I was like, yeah, why not? And I do remember a few people saying to me, yeah, I'm not sure about that decision, Chloe. Why are you leaving, your area of expertise? And I said, well, moving into a people leadership role was attractive to me because it's a new skill set, and you're going to learn something new. So, and it was a big change.
Yeah,
because accounting can be quite intense at certain times of the month, as you'd expect. There's a lot of reporting, a lot of data and analytics. But when you're in an operational team, there is daily deadlines. So it's a slightly different level of intensity, and there's no real peaks and troughs. It's just constantly busy.
Putting fires out all the time.
But I thrive in that environment. I would say I am a little Miss Busy, really. So it works for me.
You've mentioned learning quite a few times there, which is so that's really interesting to me. So it's almost like your career path has been led by learning, just that desire to keep learning something new.
Yeah. Sometimes I think the opportunities present themselves, but then I do think a lot of people have to take responsibility for driving their own career, which is something I've done. But I'm actually now doing operations for non-finance services. So again, the opportunity came, and so my current role within Liberty Blume is looking after people, so people services and solutions, so HR services for business, payroll and legal. And then I also look after construction, which is quite niche for global business services, but it's because of the history of us being in the telecoms industry. But none of that, if you kind of look back and go, okay, she's a finance trained person, that's her area of specialism, how did you end up over here? I just think you need to be open-minded. It's a lot of fun, learning about these things, and I am quite So I think finance moving into ops is actually beneficial because you've got that structure, you've got a discipline about you, and you kind of follow the data to make decisions, which is good. Problem solving as well, which is key for operations, isn't it? But not necessarily the people side. I think that's something that you've got to go on the journey and develop. And that doesn't come by being a finance expert.
It's an interesting one. Listen to you, Chloe. Obviously, we've known each other a little while.
Yes, yeah.
And I didn't really know your finance background when I met you. And, not being disparaging to anybody in finance, but often some of the people I meet in financial roles aren't necessarily really kind of strong people.
Yep.
People.
Yeah.
And, I would say that you're, a very engaging kind of person, very warm, and somebody who likes to push themselves and kind of go out of your comfort zone and really try things. And, listening to you now, you just sounds like you just embrace doing things new and you find it fun and enjoyable.
I do, yeah. And you both know this, but when it comes to big, if you've got a really significant area of accountability, so the team that work with me today, it's a big size team. We've got all those different disciplines in there. It's about finding the right people in your team, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of podcasts talk about if smart, find someone who's smarter than you, work with people you can learn from. And I generally do believe in that. And when we're hiring, I hire based on behaviors typically. Experience is beneficial, but at the same time, I also think, like for me, if they were hiring for this job based on a skill or experience in HR or legal or construction, I wouldn't have got the job.
Yeah.
But I've been in it over a year, and touch wood, things quite well.
Sounds like it. Yeah.
Interesting on that point. So, and I like the hiring for behaviours kind of mentality.
Yeah.
How do you assess that in your kind of like recruitment process?
It's a great question. So my recruitment process sometimes isn't the most structured, if I'm honest. Yeah. I'm always open to meeting people, even if I don't have a role.
Yeah.
So getting to know people and doing that networking piece and understanding where their background, where they've come from. And I can talk to a recent hire that we made this year where I'd met the candidate 3 times when I didn't have a role.
Yeah.
And then when a role did come up, I gave them a call. But it was more about their behaviours, what were their leadership values, and a little bit about their experience, but how did they view culture and how did they think about the people development and all those good things. Could we work together? Like, did I get a good feeling about them and think that, they have presence? I could put them in front of our leadership team and our executives. So it's a funny one. I think in an interview, I'm not going to sit there and ask loads of competency-based questions. No. I'm going to just get that person to talk. And then it'll be a conversation, and I will ask questions, but it'll be a little bit on the fly based on what they say. Yeah.
It's really interesting you say that. So my approach to it is quite similar, actually.
Okay.
So I don't think we've talked about this, Clem.
No, I don't think we have. Yeah.
I have probably used some of the skills I've learned through coaching and coaching training to listen more in interviews and actually not really ask lots of like rigid questions. There's a lot of subtleties to it, I believe, that you were kind of pointing to as well. And personally, I find it's an interesting one of then how do you kind of take that? Because you get a lot of that through experience, right? So
you do.
How do you take that a little bit and codify it and actually maybe put it into a process where other people like in your teams, like your managers, could then build something, if that makes sense?
It's a great question. And we actually have tried to do this.
Yeah.
So thinking about the values that I have and then the values that the company has and that the business has and that we want all our teams to sign up for. So articulating behaviours that are linked to those values and I kind of asking questions in and around that.
Yeah.
So we've tried to create a bit of a template and a guide when it comes to recruitment, but it's definitely not set in stone and it's an evolution.
Yeah.
But we have come across it from that way. So like, these are the values and these are the kind of traits that you'd see or behaviors, and you're kind of looking for that in an interview.
Yeah. That's it. We did something similar where I used to work as well. Focusing on the values, so hiring for values rather than hiring for kind of fit or hiring for competencies.
Yeah.
That was the kind of goal, but exactly like you say, it's how do you kind of codify that in a way that makes it understandable to other people interviewing and that kind of thing. So coming up with a kind of a rubric, yes, examples of behaviours which might demonstrate that value.
Yeah.
But then kind of, again, leaving it open so that it was just a set of examples, not like they need to be ticked off. That was kind of how we approached it. He's trying to get that balance in my head between actually acknowledging and going with your gut feel and your experience, but also not just making it completely like open to maybe even a bit of bias and all that kind of thing that of course comes in.
There's a few, I was just thinking about interviewing, there is a few key skills that we do look for as well. But again, happy to invest in the right candidate to for them to grow those skills. But it's almost like diving into certain topics. So talk to me about automation, of course, and technology and your approach from a customer service perspective. So those things come out. And whilst they're answering it, you're looking for those behaviours, aren't you?
Yes, you are. Yeah. And it's and that's the interesting point to me as well. So like, an interview is a bit of a false situation, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, incompetency-based questions are great, but then when people prep for it and they know what is coming, then they've prepped for it. So they're just giving you a good answer, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's true to that person. So it's then actually getting those behaviors in the way that people are responding to you within that they're true behaviors. And that's the piece that I think's like an interesting level that is really hard to then kind of cascade through an organization at a level where everyone will hire at a similar kind of level, if that makes sense. You know, there's a little bit more layer, or there's more layers of complexity to it than I think first meets the eye. And it's like, you know, especially, we've chatted about this quite a few times, if you're a new manager or a new leader and you're thrown into a situation where you have to go in and kind of interview someone or do your first one-to-ones and stuff like this. So often in that kind of first situation, you're not quite sure what you're doing, so you've got like a template that you're kind of following, and actually you're thinking about the next question you might ask, and you're not maybe listening as well as you can. And it's a little bit overwhelming. Look, we've all been there because it's a learned skill. But it's like, how do you help those people kind of do the best job possible for the organization, if that makes sense?
And I think if you have a team of, I mean, they kind of say ideally you shouldn't have more direct reports than around 7 or 8. And I'm lucky that I've got 6, so I'm in that, sweet spot. But I'm also, whenever I'm interviewing, and I don't necessarily just interview for my direct reports, I help the other leadership team members in terms of who they're interviewing and do second round. And also sometimes get involved in more, my seniors interviewing, just because they want a broad view of what everybody thinks. But we look for gaps in the team as well. So I'm also coming at it from so have we ticked the commerciality box fully? Have we got anyone who's got experience of, let's say, inorganic growth acquisition and integrating businesses or that kind of thing, or actually working in Europe with partners? So we're looking for other angles of experience, and then if they align with the behaviours and the values, then perfect.
Yeah, definitely.
Interesting.
Yeah, hiring for what you don't have and for what somebody might bring, I think, is really important. I think there's a real danger with interviewing that people just kind of hire clones, and then you just end up with a whole load of people that are basically exactly the same. And so having somebody that suddenly brings something that you don't currently have, I think, is really important.
It's an interesting point, that. So the hiring for kind of diversity of thought and and actually skills in the team is a really interesting piece. And I think the best people that I've kind of worked with, from a recruitment kind of perspective, really do look to build those kind of diverse teams. But I think you have to be quite, I don't know, it'd be interesting to get your take on this, Chloe, but I think you have to be quite confident in your own ability and quite confident in the kind of teams around you to do that. Because often if you're bringing someone who's quite different to what's currently in there,
Yeah.
if it doesn't work out, then it's your head on the bottom. So,
True.
so there's a bit of a psychological thing, I think, in hiring in the, oh, they've got the same industry experience, so they'll be fine. They've done this job previously somewhere else, so they're going to be fine. And I see that across the board in recruitment, that especially in the UK, that it's quite. Often people go for what I call a safe hire, rather than the person who will really be a transformational kind of change for them.
Yeah, and it's you're right, it does happen. And there's something about, when I was talking to you a minute ago and I was talking about the culture and could they fit with the team, of course it goes through your head, but if that candidate you think there could be a little bit of disruption, if you like, or ruffle a few feathers, I sometimes do make that call though, because I think as long as you're really clear on why you're bringing this person into the team, people get on board. And you're going to have to manage it closely to a certain extent, especially whilst you're going through that onboarding kind of bedding phase. But as long as they appreciate, everyone knows the purpose, everyone knows how their role contributes to the overarching mission, it can work. And as long as people keep an open mind about, actually, what this person can help me, I can learn from this person and be open to the challenge, it does really work. I've worked with people where I really valued their contribution because they were so different to me, the way they thought, and I like the challenge. And there's a way to do it, of course, and there's a timing element to it all. But generally speaking, I like someone who will come in and challenge the rules a little bit and ask why you want that, don't you? Because we are very focused on operational excellence and transformation. So if people are just coming in and saying, okay, this is how it works and it's always worked like this, that's not really the mindset we want. We want someone to go, well, why do you do it like that? And have you thought about this? And then being, from a relationship side, being a little bit more direct, because there's lots of different cultures and we're a global business. So there's generally kind of geographically different cultures. And you have to sometimes educate the team on, well, that's in, let's just say, in the Netherlands, for example, they're quite well known for being quite direct. But you have to get, and the British in theory are quite polite, and we're a little bit more soft in terms of how we communicate. So it's just explaining to people not to take things personally. You know, it's business, and this is completely how is acceptable over in that culture. So I do think that it comes together as provided you kind of do a little bit of that directional piece and steer people and touch base on what we're all trying to achieve, what is the purpose here. But and then we talked about we're going to talk like leadership in general. There's certain values, and I was going to say to you about for me that inclusion is key. So that's kind of what I'm talking about here, and valuing that, and getting the best out of people. So I'm a big one where I want to create a relationship with the team, and I want to be approachable. I want them to feel like I have time for them. And so I take time to get to know people, to understand how they work and how to get the best out of them. And there's been lots of situations over the years where, like I was saying, there's certain people who've worked in my team and did very well. And then I've moved on and things have changed. And then potentially they didn't have the new leader didn't have the same approach, and it doesn't always end in the same way it did before, which is interesting.
I think that is an interesting one. Well, we talk about this quite a lot, don't we? I think this is, I'm going to go over to you in a second on this, Clem, because I think this is one of your kind of specialist areas, actually. But the bit of actually getting the best out of people, if it's how vulnerable you kind of are with them a little bit, to show them a little bit of your kind of true self. Actually allowing them to get to know you, I believe, allows you to create better relationships, and generally has worked really well for me. But we've talked about this bit where can you get to know someone? Can you overshare? Can you be a bit too vulnerable? Can you be a bit too vulnerable? And what's that sweet spot?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you're right. It's something I talk about a lot. I guess because I think maybe a lot of people feel like as a leader, you've got to have the kind of a mask on all times. You've got to be highly confident, highly credible, very professional, and they're somehow fearful to kind of open up a little bit. And for me, I think that showing that humanity and that vulnerability is really important. But you're right. I guess we did talk about as well, of course, there's maybe a tipping point when it maybe gets a bit much, but, so sharing, I think the example I used the other day was like, if you're going through a really messy divorce at the moment, using your one-to-one with a direct report to share all the ins and outs of that, maybe not the best idea. Or if it turns into a one-to-one where actually you're using them for support rather than the other way around, then those might be some kind of danger areas perhaps. But generally, I think where we're able to create that connection by sharing a little bit about ourselves, generally then helps that person to just feel more confident to actually open up, to have a more honest and open conversation, which for me is really important to kind of really help somebody to get the best out of them, really.
Yeah, I agree. And it's been a bit authentic, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a good word.
Vulnerability is part of that, I think.
Yeah.
So otherwise you kind of come across quite robotic.
Yeah.
And then it gets worse. It's almost like a little bit disingenuous. So you feel like you don't connect with that person anymore.
Yeah.
And then it can go wrong. I agree. So I think it's important to take an interest in people. You work closely. You spend we all spend a lot of time at work. So takes the time at the beginning of a meeting to spend 5 minutes on asking how they are. And if they told you something last week about that they were doing outside work, ask how it went. It's simple, really. And just we're very flexible business as well. I was going to say sometimes people, so a lot of it's respectful, but a lot of the team will say, Chloe, I've got an appointment at school, or I'm doing X, Y, and Z. I'm like, absolutely, no problem. But it's nice that they feel like they should let me know.
Yeah.
But I always say you don't need permission for that. These things, there's certain things that come up on your work, between the work and your personal life, that you just have to prioritize.
Yep.
So you don't need permission. I give permission, but it is still nice to know it's today, for example. Yeah.
It is. And I smiled when you were saying that it's easy. And look, I genuinely believe it's easy as well.
Yeah.
But I think, having known you for a while, I believe that you are that type of person, a people person, and that you show interest in other people.
Yeah.
And I know you're the same as well.
Yeah.
So like, I'm interested in other people. I'll always have a chat with them about what they're up to, like we have shared interests, we were chatting away about like running and sport and stuff before, and we might come back to that, but like I'm genuinely interested and I want to know a little bit as well. And I think if you are and that type of person, then that little bit that comes easier to some people than it does to other people.
Yeah.
So if you are naturally a little bit more introverted, or I don't know, you find it a little bit more difficult to do that, I think that part can be a little bit harder for some people as well.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know, if you're maybe like a narcissist and you only want to talk about yourself, then it's like,
people avoid your calls then. But I don't know. I completely. You're right. It is easier for some people, but it does take time. I'd never personally describe myself as an extrovert at all. So I think it comes with, you build the trust with someone, don't you? And then suddenly you do feel comfortable sharing, and your connection, your relationship gets stronger. So it does take time. I've worked with lots of different people over the years where some of them are, the old personality traits. Yeah. We've recently done a little bit of this at work and you can genuinely see it. So they are that influencing type of person you want to be involved in everything. So you can see those characters in your team. And then others who are a little bit more reserved and steady or a bit analytical and take a bit of time to figure it out before they share, and that's okay. But I think it's about that, figuring out, respecting everyone's an individual and figuring out how to get the best out of them. That's
really important. People as individuals rather than just assuming that your leadership technique will work with everybody. You have to kind of adapt. I totally agree.
You do.
No, I'd agree with that as well. And do you think it's an interesting topic. Do you think as a leader, especially as you get a little bit more senior, so you're in quite a senior role with a big team now,
Yeah.
Like, do you think that you have to have a little bit more of that? I'm going to call it isn't that extrovert piece, because in my mind, an extrovert is somebody who gets energy from being around other people. But that kind of presence of being able to kind of showcase yourself to other people and, you know, stand and talk in front of other people and be able to influence and persuade. Like, how important is that as you go?
It does become a key part of the role, to your point. It's not something that I think initially I believe I enjoy. You know, like when someone will say, Chloe, you need to go and do this presentation to 100 people, you straight away go, okay. But I've done it, and the end result was usually fine. And potentially I could say I enjoyed it. There was moments in there, but it's not something I'd volunteer for, just to be completely honest. But it does come with the territory. So you get used to it, and I think you get more confident at doing it, but doesn't necessarily mean it's you're not in your comfort zone. But
I think.
What about you, Clem?
I quite enjoy doing presentations, but the thing I was going to say about the introvert extrovert kind of thing, I guess I'm sure we're all familiar with like Myers-Briggs and that kind of thing, but I guess, and that's been, let's just say, it's been widely disparaged for its lack of kind of actual validity and so on. But the problem, I think, or certainly how I used to think about extroversion and introversion, was almost like you're in one or the other, as opposed to it being a sort of more of a sliding scale. So I think for me, at times I get energy from being in groups, and I quite enjoy presenting, and all that kind of thing. But then there comes a point where actually I start to get really knackered, and I actually want some quiet time and some reflection time, and I need to recharge in a different way. So, I think it's more complex than either you're an introvert or you're an extrovert. I think a lot of people will have certain situations where they feel like they are more extroverted, and then that maybe tips into introversion and other times, and and so for me, I definitely, again, I'm one of those people, if I'm at some sort of networking event, I'll quite enjoy it for a while, and then there'll just become a kind of tipping point where I'm like, I've had enough. I'm tired. I'm just going to go. So I'm never the last person there. I'm probably going quite early, if I'm totally honest. But while I'm there, I'm quite enjoying it, kind of thing.
It is interesting. I think it is a situational thing, actually. I like talking. I probably am more extrovert than introvert. But it is situational, and I think it's a little bit like the leadership piece can be a bit situational for some people as well. So it depends in which kind of group you're in. And, we've all had groups when there's, like groups of men going out together or groups of women going out together. And there's usually somebody who's the alpha in that group, and at work, you might be the alpha person in something, but then in a different group, you might not be. And it could be in like a sports group as well. The person who's the best, fastest, whatever, might take control of that kind of group. And so I do think it's a very situational thing.
Yeah,
I do as well. And in your sporting example, if that's the one thing that you're really passionate about and very competitive, and you, as a result, you're pretty good at it, you're quite happy to be the alpha, right? It's interesting. So on I think you're completely right that it's like a sliding scale, and it's scenario. It depending on the scenario is how you will react. So, and from a leadership perspective, the best leaders, in my opinion, are the ones that have that very, very balanced personality. So you can completely adapt to the situation. So, for example, at times you need to be dominant. You need to make a decision, and you need to brief the team, and you just need to execute. And others, you've got the time to do a bit more thought and a bit more of a view of, okay, we'll get everyone's opinion, and let's be a little bit more democratic about it. And get the data, but there's a moment, depending on the situation and the time pressure, as to how you have to adapt, isn't there?
Very much so.
I massively agree with you on that one. And it's interesting, the older I get and the more different experiences that I have, I think we've talked about this, I actually believe in the leadership piece, actually maintaining your composure is probably one of the skills that people don't talk about enough, but it's probably one of the key things to actually being successful.
Yes.
And I'd be interested, because you were nodding there, I'd be interested to get your take on how you do that yourself.
Yeah, you mean keeping calm?
Yeah.
And being very patient, I suppose.
It could be calm, patient, or actually, I suppose, calm and patient, but also sometimes just keeping yourself level so that you can make a good decision at a critical moment.
Yeah. I could answer this in so many ways, in that I always think about the different elements in your brain. So, like, the chimp paradox is a perfect example of how to keep your composure. So, put the emotion aside and engage the logical mind. There is a lot of situations where I've been in and I've definitely kept my composure, but underneath, you're probably going crazy inside. But that's fine, because that's just part of the role, isn't it? And I don't know how I necessarily got to that point. It probably is through a bit of self-awareness, and a bit of resilience. So you've been here before and you've learned from the experience. If you ever did potentially have an emotional reaction to something that happened, you've got to learn from it and you've got to adapt for next time. So I think there's a little bit of that, but also being slightly older and wiser to know that it doesn't help. It's not going to help anybody. So just take the time to listen. And there's lots of ways to try and get the outcome you want without reacting in such an emotional way. I'm still on the journey, don't get me wrong. I do think there's times where I should have worded a question differently, and you just it's slightly less direct and more curious potentially, and you could probably get the same results. There's little things like that.
I think it's a never-ending journey almost.
Yeah.
And I think with me, I probably lose my patience less at work and more with my kids. which is bad, and it's like and I definitely feel like I've been on a journey with it, and especially when I was younger, I was quite a hothead, really, and I think I struggled with emotional management, and I've got a lot better over time. Like, exercise definitely helps me. I've definitely done like some breathing techniques. I've talked about this before in other ones. Like, I actually like a bit of yoga as well, which has definitely helped me. And I think, again, a little bit of this as you get older, wiser to it, you learn by experience, because you have an emotional reaction, it all goes wrong, and it's like, why did I do that? So
and you feel bad as well, and you're kind of disappointed in yourself. So it's remembering how you felt after the event to try and prevent it from happening again in the future. And on your exercise point, so I have a very disciplined morning routine, and so I generally do exercise early. I get up early. I do my exercise even before the kids are usually up. So start the day, and I think there's a chemical reaction in the body, obviously, with exercise, and that helps stress. I think it brings those stress. So the endorphins bring the stress hormones down, don't they? And so then when you get to work, you're ready for the day, and you are generally calmer.
I agree with that. So I'm curious now. Okay, so what's your morning routine? And I'll share.
Well, I'm not a 5 a.m. club person.
Yeah.
I've read the book and I was like, I still can't get up at 5. It's too much for me. But I am a 6, so I get up at 6. Generally do go for a run, go to the gym, do a class, home.
Is this every day?
Every day.
Every day, yeah.
Well, not the weekends, to be fair. I've got to flex the weekends because there's other priorities with children, isn't there? They've got their own activities, so I just squeeze it in. But generally speaking, I do like to exercise every day. So morning 6 a.m. without fail. The alarm never goes off. Your body knows.
Your body knows.
Your body knows, and then I'm quite focused on nutrition. So once I've done the run, I've had a little injury recently, which has meant that I've been a bit more focused. We have a cold plunge at home as well.
Wow.
So,
I didn't know that, actually. I didn't know.
I was in it this morning.
Every day?
No, I'm not every day. But I did go in it this morning because it's great for inflammation, and I'm trying to manage the recovery of an injury at the moment. So, and then it's nutrition. So then it's having vitamins. So I do generally do a bit of a smoothie, get
Yeah.
the key vitamins for the day. We were chatting offline about creatine eating.
Yeah.
I'm a fan. I think it's good for recovery. So,
Yeah.
and then that's me. And then get the kids ready, take them to school.
Yeah.
Unless I'm traveling, I'll do the school run, and then I flex. You know, with work, there's boundaries. So that's one of my boundaries. I generally don't take meetings till about 9:30 because I want to do the school run. So
I like that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you said this, and I'll be interested in your take as well, Clem. But personally, I believe having kind of good discipline outside of work in terms of routines is massively beneficial for the work that you do, especially as you get a little bit more senior.
Yes,
Mhm.
I agree.
So I don't do exercise every morning. I do 6 a.m. run club on Wednesday. So so I always do that. So I have to get up at 5:30 for that one.
Right,
So that's my early one. I know.
I'm sat here going, oh my God. That sounds like a nightmare.
But
Great.
That's not a morning person.
But I don't exercise every day. But I've got, you know this because of your husband, because I let your husband do jiu-jitsu. So I do jiu-jitsu once or twice a week, and then I do a couple of runs. But I'm disciplined with the days that I do my run. So I do a longer run at the weekend as well.
Yeah.
And I do like a routine of like kind of press ups and pull ups that I do every day.
Okay.
And I'm quite disciplined with that. And I'm disciplined with that. I don't eat before lunch every day. I never, for the last 3 years, I haven't eaten before lunch unless I'm going on a really long run.
Yeah.
So, and I think the discipline's really helped with other kind of areas.
Yeah, it's very impressive, the fasting. I did it for about a year. I did the 11-7, and then I started thinking, I really need that coffee, and I'm not a black coffee drinker. So I was like, so I've kept the discipline on an evening, so 7 o'clock, but I just 9:30 comes and I just can't make it to 11, James.
See, I'm okay with the black coffee. So
Yeah,
so
okay.
that's so I can't get away without coffee.
Yeah.
Like, I can't.
I can't function. It's one of my favourite things, and chocolate as well. So it's like, chocolate and coffee, I'm fine.
Yeah. So, what about you, Clem? Are you a
How do you mean in terms of
discipline?
of discipline? Yeah, I definitely agree, and I almost actually see it as, I guess it's part of kind of self-compassion. It's about giving yourself permission to have some space for yourself. I think that's, for me, what's really important. So having points in the day where I do kind of what I would see as a ritual, taking a bit of time to make some coffee, doing some mobility stuff in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to do exercise at the end of the day because I'm just not a morning person.
Yeah.
I just don't have that energy to do it in the first thing, but it's really important. It kind of clears your head, gives you a chance to reset. I used to be a cycle commuter, less so now post-COVID when we all work from home kind of thing. But the most important thing there for me was that headspace of the cycle home just allowed me to kind of clear my head, reset, feel like I'm more in home mode, family mode, get rid of the stresses of the day. So for me, the discipline of those kind of things is really important. It allows you for it to not just all blur together and, build up in this kind of pattern of stress, I think. So, yeah, totally agree. That sort of the routines, the discipline of having that kind of thing of whatever it is that works for you, always encourage people to kind of have that.
And I do think there's something, so the discipline's brilliant in the sense that you carve that time out for yourself, but it's really productive as well, isn't it? Because the amount of things I've solved whilst out running is phenomenal. So just having a bit of time to think, and so you're running, you've got some headspace, and you're like, oh yeah, that thing at work is a bit tricky. How do I navigate this? So, how do I solve this problem? Right down to back in my technical accounting days, reconciling things where I had like something I couldn't figure out why it didn't balance. I was like, what is that?
Yes.
And then on my run, I'd be like, I hadn't thought about this. Something triggers, and you're like, oh,
there's a bit of science behind that, isn't there? Well, you're going to go down that route.
I was just going to share that it's not in an exercise way, but where I used to work many years ago when I was much more in sort of software engineering world, we used to say to people, if you're stuck on a problem, just go and take a bus somewhere. Because while you're on the bus, you're going to solve it. Well, like the number of times you've been wrestling with a problem all day, and then you go home, and on the bus you go, I wonder if, and then you come in the next morning and you solve it in 2 seconds.
But
Yes.
do you know the science behind it?
No, go on.
Well, there is some science apparently, and look, I don't. Let's be clear. I'm taking this from somebody else, right? So, but apparently, your conscious mind can only hold roughly about 12 things, and your unconscious mind can process about 1 million things. So the problem is, and this is a coaching principle as well, that actually, when we're too focused on thinking and trying to solve a problem, we're getting in the way of ourselves. So actually, it often comes out when you're doing things when the unconscious mind is set free a little bit. Yeah. So running's brilliant for it. Getting out into the open and out in the out in the countryside is kind of brilliant for it as well. Yeah. Sleeping kind of works. So we often say sleep on it, and then you wake up in the morning and you've solved the problem. Often people in the shower, you'll be drifting away and you're not actually thinking of anything. Just pop into your head. So it's actually from a kind of coaching kind of principle, there's a piece of get out of the way of yourself with it and do something actually as well. Apparently if you do something that's using both hands or both sides of your body, it takes it from it's either your left side of your brain or right side of the brain, I forget which one. So actually cooking can be really good, gardening can be really good for this type of thing. Or anything where you have to focus really intently on something that you can't actively think. So say like downhill mountain biking or skiing or something where it's it's so intense that you actually really have to be in it, and then it'll free your mind and it'll kind of go out through.
Yeah. Oh, it's good. We've all incorporated that time into the day, which should make us, more productive. And perform better. Yeah.
Talk about coaching.
Yes.
So we talked about obviously this coaching corner.
We're big fans.
We're big fans. Talked to you before that you've had coaching previously. I'd just be interested in getting on your take on coaching.
Yeah, of course. I have had a performance coach from a work perspective for about 5 years now. So within our business, there's a couple of things that could potentially trigger you having a coach. So we invest in people. So people that we see that have got incredible potential, when they get to a certain level, a performance coach becomes a great way to unlock that potential. So, and also certain leadership roles are also, we've found in our experience very beneficial for them to have a coach to kind of work on a few of their gaps. So it's brilliant. So I've been lucky enough to have one for 5 years. We meet quarterly, and for me, it's been great for self-awareness. Someone else getting you to talk about whatever it is that you need a little bit of support on. Sometimes you just want to almost have a bit of a vent at times and go, what do you think? Actually they never answer because they don't give you any advice. They coach you to find the answer, which is brilliant, and you don't even realise they've done it. So no, it's been so good for someone to go, well, actually, Chloe, have you thought about why that happened, or why things resulted in the way they did, or why that person acted like that? And you're like, okay, and you unpick it and you learn a lot about yourself. And then we've found so many ideas. Strategic thinking is great during a coaching session. And for me, it's career chats as well. Okay, so I've got a gap and I'm figuring out how to drive this forward. And they just ask you questions that unlock potentially those things in your subconscious where what do you like doing? Why do you want that? Like sometimes I imagine you have some really interesting conversations, I bet, with people. But like people come in with an idea and by the end of the session, they've figured out that probably wasn't a good one. So, but for it to have been as successful for me as it has been, I have to prepare. You have to do the work. I don't kind of show up on the fly. I think about, okay, so I've got a session in a week's time. What's been going on? And actually, between quarters, I've got a notebook where I'll write down, okay, this is for coaching. Like something's happened.
Okay, interesting.
And I'll jot it down and go, right, I want to kind of explore this a little bit more. So making sure I don't forget, make a few notes, and then we'll have the conversation. So you do have to I think you have to be honest.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have to respect that it's confidential as well. And as soon as you do that, I think you'll find the value.
Yeah. It's interesting listening to you. You sound like a great coach.
You sound like a dream coaching client.
Yeah.
They've actually done loads of preparation.
Yeah. And it's interesting, that bit of kind of how to show up.
Yeah.
Because I've had coaching myself, like, I've shared it a few times, that the way I came to becoming a coach is that I'd had coaching myself, and I found it transformational. But I think exactly to your point, like how you show up and how you approach it really is kind of the cornerstone of whether it's going to work. And we talk, in coach training, you're taught that if somebody really doesn't want it, or it's forced upon them, then it probably won't work, because you need to have the right attitude in the first place. You do need to have that learning mindset that you talked about previously. And actually, often the people who are kind of ambitious and really want to grow stuff are really great kind of coaches. So it is an interesting piece of kind of how to show up. I without breaking any confidentiality or anything, but I have had people turn up in the past saying, "Can you just solve this for me?" And it's like, well, actually, this isn't what coaching is.
Yeah.
It's not.
I think sometimes people have to go on that journey. I guess if they haven't had coaching before, which I work with quite a few clients where it's the first time they've had coaching. Yeah. So sometimes there is a period of figuring out what coaching is. So sometimes people come thinking, right, they're going to just tell me what to do. I'll outline it, and then I'll just do what they say. And like you say, it's not like that. It's not advice. And actually, it's much more powerful when they get that opportunity to essentially solve it themselves, to think through it. But we just often don't get the time and space to do that, or just having somebody ask questions which are just maybe from a bit of a different angle that you'd never occurred to you. That for me is, again, I've had coaching, and that's where the real value's been. It's like, oh my God, I've not ever even thought of that angle. And it's just like,
Well, I so over the 5 years, that's a fair amount of sessions. They've been uncomfortable at times, and it should be, shouldn't it? Your coach is challenging you to really kind of look at how something you did, or inside, and say, it can be uncomfortable. You're like, okay, I got that wrong, but I need to understand why, and I need to learn from it. So, and I used to get nervous as well. I'd be like, oh, I'm turning up. I need to look like I've thought about this, and it's a useful session. It's almost like I cared about their experience. But I honestly, they've helped me through so many things. So 5 years ago, I do remember saying, the big boss, I daren't go speak to that person, and fight. You'll have heard this loads of times, I'm sure, but it's that inferiority complex, isn't it? Where you're a bit like, should I speak now? Does anyone care about my opinion in this room? And just overcoming all of that has been great as well.
The overcoming the kind of speaking up in meetings and in rooms, especially when it's your first step into that kind of level. I don't know about you, but I think that comes up quite a lot with me. So it's very common. And I certainly had that the first time. So in my previous business, when we were bought out, and then we went into his first kind of true boardroom kind of situation. And in the first ones, it was like turning up, full suit and tie, like, please sir, can I speak? Like, and I definitely felt like that for the first time. So it's interesting, but that really helps. Definitely.
It does. And the other thing I learned about that, just that scenario, is genuinely even though you're in a room with incredibly senior people that do this day in, day out, and quite often they're all very confident and articulate and very direct with the conversations, they do want to hear what you have to say in the majority of, and it's kind of getting that in your head, and then having the courage to say something, and they do kind of go, hang on a minute, Chloe was speaking, which is great, isn't it? So I know there's a cultural thing there, but at times, I've been in many meetings where people can talk over each other. So
Yeah.
it can sometimes be challenging to get in there.
Yeah.
And I think that happens at all levels as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, the dynamic of a meeting is always an interesting.
Yes. Yeah.
Even kind of round tables. So we've done a few round tables. And again, I'm singing your praises here, but I think you're a great facilitator of encouraging people to all speak up and setting. And one of the things I've learned from you is just really the kind of like the rule setting and setting the tone for the meeting going into it. As somebody kind of running it is a brilliant thing to do that can actually make it incredibly beneficial, and you get some really good ideas coming out of it.
Yeah.
But you have to be purposeful with that.
You do, yeah. And I use what I tend to call a social contract these days. So I always start any kind of workshop or meeting with a social contract, which is a kind of agreement as to how we're going to work together. So, what are the rules for how we're going to engage? And the kind of aim is to make it really clear to people that we're going to respect each other, or we're going to avoid talking over each other if we can. We're going to share airtime, whatever it might be. But also crucially, allowing people to feed into that so they can add things to it. We might agree, to add extra things for that particular session. And like you say, hopefully it works really well just to kind of allow everybody to sort of just have that clarity as to, okay, this is how it's going to work. Now I know a little bit better how to engage and how it's going to kind of run. So, for me, I find it a really important thing to do and an effective kind of technique. Doesn't happen as much in kind of things like board meetings, though.
Definitely
I guess that's
not.
the challenge.
No.
But maybe it should.
Well, it's interesting. I've brought it into board meetings to do it.
Excellent.
So and we're in a small company, but it's an interesting thing to do because we often have differing opinions on things.
Okay.
So actually, it's then to allow people to fully kind of talk through their points, get through it, and actually try and understand each other's points so that we can actually then come to a better decision for the business.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you find that people will, so someone's midpoint and someone interrupts, does someone then go, let them finish? Or did they say, let me finish? Or
yes, we have said that. Yeah, we have. Go on.
Yeah, no, I was well, two things popped into my head there. One is that there's actually that's where the social contract can help, because I think people feel really awkward sometimes about doing that, as in saying, hang on a minute, but if you've agreed it up front explicitly, you can kind of almost point and say, hang on, we agreed we weren't going to do that. So it's not like then me cutting you off. It's actually just bringing people's attention back to what we all agreed. But the second thing, I guess, is let me acknowledge, there can be a real value in having an external facilitator, because it's quite difficult if you're kind of wearing many hats or multiple hats in a session to also be the person trying to enforce the social contract. So sometimes I think there is that. I mean, again, it feels a bit self-promotional, but the value of an external facilitator can be that person is just purely focused on that. How's this meeting running? How's this workshop going? How do I draw out all those voices? How do I keep people honest to what we agreed up front? It's a lot more difficult when you get in all of those nuances of, I'm kind of also working with a bunch of really senior people here. I know the different personalities, it's not it can be a tricky thing.
We're not, within the business I work, we're not too bad at this in theory. So when we're doing a so someone comes in to do a presentation, generally speaking, we give them chance to present. And if they're mid-presentation, and it's great that you've got engagement, and it's great that people are asking questions, but if it's late, if they kind of answer that later, you kind of go, I'm going to answer that. And that can be, depending on who the presenter is, that's quite a big confidence thing, isn't it? With that audience, you have to go, I'm going to come back to that. But giving people the confidence to do that. So if you set the rules of engagement, perfect, I think.
It's an interesting one, and I think it's an interesting one with that confidence piece coming in. As you were progressing in your career, how did you find that confidence, or did you find that you were like just naturally okay?
Well, no, I think it did take time, and as you'd probably expect that typically you'll be more confident if you're talking about your area of expertise or your team's contribution. so if I actually go into a very senior meeting, I'm doing a presentation, generally speaking, you can be quite confident because it's your topic and you're prepared. It's harder, I think, because as you go senior, you've got to have a view, and if you've got to support the overarching strategy for everything. So you do have a really broad remit all of a sudden. So I then found that sometimes my opinions would be a little bit different, but it's having a culture where there's a safety to sharing a different view. And so that took a little bit of experience. So in the beginning, I probably wouldn't have said anything too controversial, but then as you kind of get more confident and you see other people do it, you think, actually, maybe they do want to hear what I think. And the coaching helps, because your coach will say, just give it a go. What have you got to lose? So you're like, okay, next time. And then it becomes quite natural all of a sudden, doesn't it? Yeah. But then I feel like there's a tipping point in that sometimes you become too confident and you haven't thought it through. So, and I'm not, thankfully I'm quite a thoughtful, reflective person. So that's not my personal experience, but I've seen that happen before, where there's some kind of knee-jerk comments, or they don't quite understand the subject and they've come in with something, and then you see how that lands, don't you? So learning from others as well.
Watching other people fail.
I'm
not going to do that.
Don't do that. Don't argue on certain points if we've already decided.
Yeah, it is an interesting one, isn't it? And going back to your finance background, just listening about like the thinking through your answers and trying to come up with your own kind of credible decisions and input on it. It's kind of fascinating, really. That I find that, like, that kind of decision making kind of process on it. I'm a less analytical kind of person, I believe. So I think I'm more people focused. And I was just trying to put myself in your shoes, go that how would I be making decisions on that? And I think, like, where do you go? So I'm curious, actually, what kind of, like, do you have like fundamentals that you kind of think about when you're making a decision?
Yeah, well, I think just as a general, from a leadership value perspective, for me, so I've worked with so many different leaders, and there's all shapes, isn't there, in terms of and styles. So being accountable when the times are hard is really important. So we talked a little bit about being your true self and encouraging, taking time to be a bit of an empathetic leader. And I don't mean soft by any means. I just mean taking the time to invest in people. But then being accountable. So I'm sure you have had this many times in coaching sessions, but you come across people who can take credit for the work of others. And I always think a really good value for me is to make sure that when something goes well, that we give credit and recognition to the right people. So that's part of one of my leadership values. And I think that's part of the reason why the team's as strong as it is today. But also, when it goes wrong, don't point the finger, take it. So we as a team got this wrong. And behind the scenes, people might say, okay, what happened? And you're going to have a conversation with however that unraveled. And that's more so we can learn not to humiliate anyone or anything else. But in the room, when it matters, when people are asking the question, you've got to be accountable. I've made decisions over the years that potentially, when we talk about recruitment, I've hired people where not necessarily everyone was in agreement, but at the end of the day, I work for a great boss at the moment who would say, Chloe, you have the autonomy to make the decision, but on you, the risks are with you, which is fine. So take it, and that's great. So you have that empowerment, and it's wonderful when it works out. Because you know deep down that you've got this. So you're like, okay, we'll see how this goes. But then at times, if it doesn't, you have to make a decision and deal with that difficult situation and deal with it in a timely manner as well. So we've all been there.
We've all done that. We've all done that. 100%. And the timely manner thing's an interesting one as well. I agree with you on that one. And I think, experience previously shows that you can definitely leave that far too long.
Yeah.
And especially if you've got, I don't know, like generally a high performing team. So
Mm-hmm.
overall everything looks rosy.
Yeah.
And then really there's one or two people who maybe aren't blown away. And if you don't deal with it promptly, and that affects the culture with everyone else, because people see that this kind of behavior or performance is being tolerated and it's not in line with everyone else.
Yeah.
So,
and that can have from a culture angle, that can have a really a negative impact, can't it? So I've hired. So when we were talking about hiring earlier, there's that piece where you kind of go through like discovery when you get to know a candidate, and then if there's something deep down where you're just thinking, I'm not sure, and I've been in situations where I've hired someone when I wasn't comfortable, and we all live and learn, and other people who were involved in the interview process says, yeah, absolutely right, best candidate by far, right person for the job. So then you feel the pressure. You're like, well, they've seen this, so maybe we'll go with it. And not too long ago, I learned actually I should have done what I thought, because they weren't right. And on a timely point, I kind of dealt with it before they passed probation, because you've got to make that decision and figure this out quickly. And then you're back at square one, let's face it, 'cause you've got to hire someone else.
The gut feel thing's an interesting one of those. I've done exactly the same as you mentioned there, where I thought there was something niggling, but the problem was, in one of my instances, I didn't know what the problem was. Like there was something niggling, but I didn't know what the niggle was. And it's one that I've it's just maybe my reflection was to try and trust your gut a little bit more, but then kind of actually maybe take some time and space and try and work out what that niggle is. And it was definitely a situation where other people were like, great, and it didn't work out. But I'm still not quite sure what the niggle. But something just wasn't quite right.
But then you probably learned that even though you couldn't wholeheartedly point to the problem, there was a problem, and you did the right thing. Because from that example I just shared, I've then learned that when you've come into roles where you've taken over from someone else, so the team I lead today is a team that obviously had a previous leader. And so you kind of start from scratch, and I come in with really open mind, and I'm trying to figure out where the business is going in the future. How do I enable that? So what skills and behaviors do I need? And if I have someone in the team that doesn't quite align, dealing with that, but then giving them chance. So there's this finite amount of time, isn't there, where I was a bit like, okay, don't make your mind, because I can be very decisive and impatient at times. Which a few people would attest to, but I was going to say, okay, give feedback, give them chance, explain what you need from that person, give them the direction. And then if it's not working, fine, but I do think it depends on the scenario, but 3 months coming into a role and it's a team that you've inherited is probably not enough amount. In my experience, is not enough amount of time to make a decision yet. 6 is though. So that's kind of how, that's in my experience, that's what I've learned.
Definitely. Yeah, it's a really tricky one. I think, again, you learn through experience what the right sort of time frame is for the right situation. Because I agree. I think maybe earlier in my career I was too generous. I was always, I don't want to. I want to give them a bit more time, and then actually you look back and you think nothing really changed in that time. That decision could have been made earlier. But equally, I think it's the worst thing when somebody has made a judgment about somebody without giving them any chance at all. They've had no feedback. Part of the topic I always like to talk about, if they've had no feedback, nobody's told them about these things, and then there's nothing they can do at that point. That's not a great situation.
No, and that's a bad leader, isn't it?
Yeah. They've kept it quiet and then they've dropped it on them in one go. That's nobody's going to benefit from them.
And that's probably, we were talking at the beginning about your person, you want to work with people who are like you. That's probably a little bit of that as well. So that person wasn't like them, and they kind of want, for whatever reason, people that are very similar, then that's really not a great way to go about it.
Very true. Something you mentioned is kind of, you also mentioned it slightly, Clem, but Chloe, you mentioned the clarity kind of piece.
Yeah.
And this is something that I think is really important, and it's something somebody like a kind of a trusted mentor gave me this advice before we started building and growing Exalta, was actually, one of the really key things, especially when you're a small business, is absolute clarity on situations. And I think I believe this agrees with like your performance kind of conversations as well, is that clarity on exactly what the expectations are, and really having those conversations early.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people in management or leadership roles just don't have those conversations.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's some really senior, successful people find those conversations really difficult. So that confrontational, part of the role where you do have to call someone out and say, I don't think you performed well in this scenario. That is not easy, let's face it. And you get better at it and it comes with experience, but I suppose it's how you approach it. So in some of these difficult conversations I've had, it's more of the team. Okay, so I've got to go do this quite unpleasant thing now, but I need to come at it from the priorities of the team, the greater good, the greater good for the business, and take all that emotion out and sadly just deal with it on a factual basis and point to this is what we agreed and this is kind of where we've landed. And there's nothing pleasurable about that. But you've got to do it, haven't you?
Yeah, you do. You do. And again, when you talk about feedback a lot, and doing feedback sessions, and it's probably why it's one of the most popular courses, because nobody likes delivering.
No, people find it really tough. For some reason, you made me think there's a film with, I want to say George Clooney is some sort of person who goes around and fires people at companies because kind of enjoys doing it. But I think I'm going to have to find out what that company was. What that film was. But yeah, I totally agree. It's never going to be something that people go, oh, I'm really looking forward to this now. But it's something I think over time you I don't know if it's a real kind of role or not, but sometimes I think senior people are brought in perhaps to carry out a really difficult thing at a company. And
I know an organisation, again, won't say the names, who used to use a HR kind of consultant to do stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Just outsource it all.
Yeah.
The other one sometimes, and you'll have had this as well, is sometimes people come to coaches, so they'll approach us and go and use this for disguised performance management, which is one where you have to kind of push back to them and say, look, actually that's your job to do this, and it's one of the things you've got to be quite kind of wary of at the front. It's definitely. Like, actually, I want you to help improve this person, but they don't know that they need any help. And I was like, oh, why? Okay, let's have a conversation about this.
And maybe this is down to, the company needs to take some responsibility because maybe they're not training people to be able to do this stuff.
100%.
And if you haven't followed the process because you weren't given the training, then it's really difficult. You're at a point where you're then into different types of management and exits, which cost the company a fortune if you're not careful. So
It's a strange old place, isn't it?